Hello friends, I'm going to begin now with Esoteric Astrology Adventure 110. It may be that we only have time to do 1 hour program here. We've been talking about Taurus in a rather difficult way. The Tibetan has spent a long time describing the difficulties encountered by those who are born in this sign. That means with the sun in this sign. He has not spoken or mentioned Taurus rising, though perhaps there is something that he says about the sun in Taurus can also be applied to the rising sign. He has spoken of this sign in terms of its selfishness, its self-will, its self-determination, its self-interest, very difficult problems with the sign, since it carries as its rulers Ray 5, Venus, Ray 1, Vulcan, and since it is so closely connected with the Earth, Ray 3 is part of the picture as well. So we're going to enter a little further into this issue. DK tells us on page 396, it is a dangerous sign because the destructive aspects are so easily overemphasized and so intelligently applied to circumstance that the career of the bull can be both destructive within its field of contacts and at the same time self-destroying until such a time that self-will or selfish desire is tempered by aspiration. Obviously, he's speaking of those who are not really on the reversed wheel. He's talking about how humanity, given that Taurus is the strongest arm of the fixed cross where average humanity is concerned, cannot easily handle the kinds of energies that are released in this sign. He does actually emphasize as well the intelligence aspect of Taurus, the pursuit of knowledge, even though it may not be practically applied to disciplic improvement. We have seen quite a number of Taurean people who have had a very destructive effect. Of course, it is also the sign of the builder, and when a person is on the path and Vulcan is being used as the fashioner and not as the hammer-wielding destroyer, then we have an entirely different picture here. And, you know, the greatest of all the Taureans, as far as our humanity is concerned, is the great Buddha, who is immensely identified with this sign, said to have been born in Taurus, to have achieved his illumination, I suppose, of the 6th degree in Taurus, a very high type of illumination touching the cosmic mental plane, and to have passed on in Taurus as well. As I've often said, I think there is an analogy that just as, let us say, that as Christ is to the initiate Jesus, so was the true Buddha to the Prince Gautama. That will, in time, be proven or disproven, but it is my present theory. As I say, if one has been the head of the hierarchy for 2,500 years, as the Buddha was at the time that he was born, ready almost to relinquish that position to the Lord Maitreya, there would be no need to go off into the forest to find illumination, so to speak. He would already be the masterful head of the entire hierarchy, though he could work through his initiate, linked initiate, Gautama, just as the Lord Maitreya worked through the initiate, Jesus. So, with the reversal of the wheel, there comes a time when the self-will or selfish desire, so habitual to the undeveloped Taurean person, it will be tempered by aspiration, but until that time, the hammer aspect of Vulcan, I think, is very active. The bull in the china closet active, probably even unintentionally destroying things that were not meant to be destroyed, and even destroying oneself. I guess it shares with Scorpio, this self-destructive tendency. I'll put that down. Sharing the self-destructive tendency with Scorpio. Although Scorpio and Taurus linked together are powerfully transformational and apply very definitely to the fourth kingdom of nature and to the fourth creative hierarchy, because they both wield, at this time, at least among the rays given by the DK, exclusively the fourth ray of harmony through conflict. So aspiration eventually gives place to intelligent activity and to the acceptance of the will emanating from the spiritual center of life. So here is another sequence of states. Let's look at it this way: desire, to aspiration, to intelligent activity, and finally to the acceptance of the will and its intelligent wielding. This leads to cooperation with the plan in the fullest sense, and the end of individual self-centeredness. DK has talked about self-centeredness in connection with the first ray, of course. I suppose any personality focus tends to be that, but also he has given it as a liability of the fourth ray, and the fourth ray, we know, is powerful constellationally in this sign. The difference between the constellation and the sign, well, the sign is a representation, a condensation of Davic substance through which the energies of the constellation can work. Sometimes when I've looked at the picture of Master DK, which occult rumor has it is a fairly good likeness, I seem to detect some of the Taurean quality. Certainly the Geminian quality is there. His accumulation of knowledge is vast, and his will to liberation must have been intense. He has a great storehouse, a great treasure of knowledge to share with humanity. So perhaps he speaks from experience here about the qualities of the Taurean, although I'm sure it's been a very, very long time since someone of his stature has been the undeveloped man, thousands upon thousands of years. So anyway, cooperation with the plan and seeing the plan in the illumined consciousness is certainly possible to the one who has truly reversed the wheel and is born in Taurus. And the coming of the great light, the realization of the greatest light. I see the greatest light on the second ray, second sign, Taurus, and the whole body being full of light with the single eye. All of these achieved, they will end that kind of illusionary myopia we call self-centeredness, where we concentrate our attention upon our very, very limited identity as if it were the whole of our identity. Temper, which is so characteristic of the bull, must give place to directed spiritual energy. Well, the loss of one's tempering really is what temper means here. And the temper builds up, I suppose. There's a great spiritual power which can be wrongly released through displays of temper or rightly directed. So great energy rightly directed at last, and seeing where one is going, because the eye is opened. So we're told that Taurus rushes blindly until Sagittarius directs, but eventually that eye of illumination is opened, and then one has the proper vision with which to cooperate with the plan. So temper, which is so characteristic of the bull, must give place to directed spiritual energy, for temper is but energy run wild in the interests of the personality. Every once in a while, DK comes up with wonderful definitions, surprising us with them. DK's definitions. And they have something unique about them, a unique perspective that allows us to see a whole nother angle on what we may have defined in a different way. Temper is but energy run wild. In the interest of the personality, it is not properly conserved, restrained, directed under the will, which has a higher objective than personality interests in mind. Blindness, for the bull is blind for much of his career, and you know, he shares that with Aries. The sheep do not have very good eyes. This blindness is shared with Aries. We have, interestingly enough, here on page 332, I always like to refer to that, such an excellent tabulation of Aries' blind, undirected experience. So blindness is connected with the ram and also with Taurus. Let's just say that in Taurus, the old saying that desire is blind applies. Blindness must give place to vision, and it's a comprehensive spherical vision of the one eye. And the right focus of the sight. And this will finally dispel the self-engendered illusions and glamours of the aspirant, because the sight of the single eye is the sight of the soul, and if one is subject to glamour and illusion, the sight is still occurring within the personality fields. It has not been dissipated or dispelled. That is, the illusions have not been dispelled and the glamours dissipated by a higher type of sight. This occurs also in Scorpio, doesn't it? This similar relief occurs in Scorpio when the Hydra is uplifted into the realm of intuition. So it seems that the Taurean individual so often is responsible for his own unfavorable condition and stubbornly refuses to change this. But eventually, through the conservation of energy, the eye opens, and the two eyes, which are the eyes of objectivity, no longer rule, and knowledge gives place to wisdom, wisdom requiring a deep and comprehensive understanding, which is facilitated by the opening of the one eye over a long period of time, actually. The eye opens, we are told, starts to open even at the first initiation, but may take until the third, until it really begins to confer the unitive vision. It is quite astonishing, the emphasis that DK is giving to the negativities of Taurus. I have not found this in relation to any other sign. Self-engendered glamours and illusions of the aspirant, and then self-pity. Of course, Hitler, the archetypal negative Taurus of our age, was prone to great self-pity and to a unique type of blindness and to frothing temper tantrums. The story is that he was possessed, of course, but that he would even throw himself down rapidly and chew the rug, These stories are, well, maybe they're rumor, or maybe they are first-hand accounts of some of the very undignified behavior of which he was capable. But so many of these qualities apply intensely to him. Self-pity, which is the effect of a constant concentration on the frustration of desire in the personality life, and must be succeeded by compassion for all humanity. The Buddha, the archetypal positive Taurus, Buddha was the Lord of compassion. That doesn't mean he wasn't a master of wisdom. He was really both. But it is the compassion of the Buddha that is so often discussed. There's a story of his many lives, and in one of them he was a kind of starving mendicant, and he saw a mother tiger who could not feed her young, and he had such compassion that he threw himself in front of her and became the means by which she could feed her young. Whether this is a true story or a symbolic story, we will not know. So, quite a definition of self-pity. A constant concentration, a fixated vision, you might almost say, on the frustration of desire in the personality life. In other words, non-appreciation. Of course, with Venus being the planet of appreciation and the ruler of Taurus, we would think that it would be possible to see the beauty of all things and to value the beauty of life. And I suppose this is eminently possible for the more advanced Taurean. I'm thinking of how Krishnamurti began some of his lectures. He did not immediately get into the mental point of it. He began by describing the beauty of his surroundings so often. He relayed what he saw with his, I would say, unveiled senses. So high Taureans and low, and all the different rays. I mean, if you think about it, some of them on the first ray, let us say Hitler or Robespierre, some on the second ray, the Buddha, Krishnamurti, and so forth. Some on the third ray, Immanuel Kant, I suppose Balzac, he was a Taurean. He probably had a strong fourth ray. And so we could go and discuss the many. Was it Florence Nightingale? I think she was a Taurus, had to have a very strong seventh ray. John Brown was a Taurus, an immense sixth ray. I'll just have to leave the fifth ray out of it for a moment. I can't think of anything, but obviously this could be easily found. The ray occurs, it seems, independently of the sun sign, and it's possible to be born in any sun sign and have any ray as one's sole ray or secondary ray, in addition to the rays which are associated with the sign itself. So self-pity, which is the effect of a constant concentration on the frustration of desire in the personality life. I'm remembering Hitler saying, when it was almost all over, that Germany was not worthy of him. He had come as the great liberator and Messiah, but the German people had, in his view, not risen to the challenge to follow him in the right way. Thus, this megalomania was displayed. He had a powerful Leo as well, the Tibetan tells us, in his soul chart. And also, we know, an elevated Saturn in Leo in his actual astrological personality chart. Anyway, compassion for all humanity has to supersede this self-pity, pity for others, leading to true compassion and true service. And this must be developed into the selfless service, yes, of the salvaging initiative. I'm remembering that the Tibetan has given some charts in some material now released onto the internet in which there was a chart with the Sun in Taurus and Pisces rising, and one began to wonder whether he was not somehow revealing the energies of the Buddha himself. Again, with Master KH, it was the Sun in Gemini and Pisces rising. And he had some other charts there as well. But the Savior, the salvaging Savior, is indicated by Pisces. And the utilization of all that has been accumulated, garnered, because, of course, Taurus is one of the great accumulators of quality, first of knowledge, then I suppose of wisdom. The use of all that in selfless service is a kind of a combination of Taurus and Aquarius. The task of the Taurean is a hard one, for he embodies in himself to a marked degree outstanding limitations as regards the processes of spiritual evolution. As DK said, it's not so common among the average Taurean to find the demonstration of love and wisdom, even though it's quite different for the developed Taurean. He embodies in himself outstanding limitations as regard to the processes of spiritual evolution. There are, however, no insuperable difficulties, and the liberated Taurean, liberated, well, is that a fourth degree, or are we talking simply about the one who is in the process of initiation? The liberated Taurean is ever a constructive, planning, creative, forward-moving force. So after all of these warnings about the negatives, we do have a very positive series of descriptors. The constructive side of Vulcan is being emphasized. The vision, which allows for right planning, is being emphasized. The creativity of the fourth ray and Venus is coming out. And there is the onward rush of the Bull of God, but this time perhaps not spasmodically, but in a more measured pace, which is quite irresistible, quite relentless, and has this great momentum build up so that it will keep moving simply out of habit. I would say, put that down, keep moving simply out of habit. Such men are greatly needed in these serious days of readjustment and strain. Those who can rebuild civilization. Well, DK wanted that done, that the shrine of civilization would be rebuilt after the Second World War, and we can question the degree of rebuilding that occurred. Certainly the full promise was not lived up to. But we can see that when the seventh ray will combine with Taurus, Taurus will be prominent in the New Age, though square the Aquarian energy, but still Taurus will be prominent because the new world servers will be emerging into a great serving body, so thus combining the signs Taurus and Aquarius in one group, we can see that civilization could be rebuilt. The shrine of man's living could be erected properly, and this under the guidance of the Christ and his present hierarchy, for which we are attempting as conscious forerunners to pave the way by presenting to humanity this vision of what is possible for their emergence, or what is possible to humanity when they do emerge. Taurus, as you know, rules the neck and the thyroid gland, and of course you do, interestingly, see this pronounced in many Taurian people, where you can't really see the thyroid gland, but the neck is prominent, maybe short and thick and coming down from the chin, and it's often an indication that the Taurus energy is present. Of course, the neck is a great support for the head. This is essentially the region whence must emanate the creative activity of the man who is upon the path, because if we think about the creativity that was discussed here just a little earlier, creative because the throat center is involved. So even though Taurus is not especially a third-ray sign, and although the throat center is a third-ray center, it is allied with the creative power of sound through the throat center, either through the spoken word or through music, through that which is sung and sustained. You know, the power to sustain sound, musical sound, is pronounced in Taurus. And when you think of Vishnu as the great singer, well, he sustains the universe through music. The universe is music, this symbolically considered, although maybe there's more literal truth to the universe being music than we may know. And in this second sign, Taurus, the singing can occur. So this is the region from whence must emanate the creative activity of the man who is on the path, using the third ray and even the seventh ray through the throat center. The throat is a point to which the energy of the sacral center must be lifted, so the creation through love and by will eventually prove the sublimatory effect of the transference to higher use of the sex energy. And this is such a Taurean task, just what DK has talked about here. Such a Taurean task, the raising of the energy of the sacral center, because Taurus is so identified with the sex energy. And in the labors of Hercules, we understand that Hercules did master the sex energy, and he drove the bull to the Isle of the One-Eyed Men, and that single eye will not open unless a sufficient amount of the energy normally expended in sex is raised to the pineal gland. So there's so much physiological truth in that particular labor of Hercules. If the eye is to open, then the sex energy must be sublimated. And DK was telling us earlier about the combination of Taurus and Venus energy, and sublimation was one of the four qualities that we had to be on the lookout for in relation to Taurus and Venus. These four factors, as we may remember here, indicating the union of Venus and Taurus mentality, sublimation, sex, and symbolism. So we have all of these combined in the discussion that Master DK is now undertaking. That occurred just a little while ago in some of our earlier programs here. So the throat is a point, maybe not the only point, but a point to which the energy of the sacral center must be lifted, so that creation through love and by will prove, through the throat center, will prove the sublimatory effect of the transference to the higher use of sex energy. And we saw that Taurus had to cultivate love and move from aspiration through intelligent activity to will. So it may be a long time before the throat center can be properly used by the Taurean, but once it is, the formulations created there can be guided by will and love, by wisdom. I mean, there must be a very deep connection of Taurus with wisdom, at least for the advanced individual. Otherwise, the archetypal Buddha here could not be the Lord of wisdom as well as the Lord of light, and he was also a Lord of compassion. The right use of the organs of speech gives the clue to the processes whereby the disciple must bring about certain basic changes, and we might say the selfless use of the organs of speech. The Taurean upon the way of liberation would do well to employ the method of directed and motivated speech of an outgoing and explanatory nature, and there's the Ray 5 we see. Explanations given, also some of the Ray 2, in order to transform himself from one who goes willfully on his personality way into a wise cooperator with the plan. This is, I think, a powerful sentence. The Taurean upon the way of liberation, because the will to liberation is very strong in Taurus, right? This we just recently learned. Will to liberation, very strong in Taurus. Would do well to employ the method of directed and motivated speech. Not just reactive speech, emotionally impulsed, but directed and motivated by an illumined vision of the plan, and of an outgoing and explanatory nature, and we might say thus spreading the light with which Taurus is abundantly endowed. Outgoing and explanatory nature, bringing light, bringing illumination through speech. So, through speech. In order to transform himself, wherever Scorpio and Taurus are involved, the idea of transformation is powerfully present. In order to transform himself from one who goes willfully on his personality way with a great concentration of force focused upon the fulfillment of personal desire into a wise cooperator with the plan, constructively using the many energies with which he is endowed and using the fashioning side of Vulcan to build those forms which will fulfill the plan. So the speech should be motivated by will and by love, let us say. Motivated by love and by will. And we can ask ourselves of our own speech, what motivates it? Reaction, frustration, irritation, all of the various factors. What is the quality of the speech which we send into the world? And is it luminous? Is it luminous speech? We want to ask that. Is our speech luminous and illuminating? And that has to be determined. By this I mean that as a man translates his ideals, now there's that concept of idealism, once again, the highest form of aspirational idealism found in Taurus. Aspirational. Oh, let's get that correct. As he translates his ideals into words and acts, he brings about transformation, transmutation, and eventually translation upon the mountain top of initiation. The word transfiguration has not been used here, but I think that the great light of Taurus can be easily involved in the transfiguration. And let's just say transfiguration, followed by translation to the Buddhic plane, or translation of the energies from the dense physical level of the Solar Logos into his etheric nature. It's another language. The cosmic etheric language is different from the language of the dense physical vehicle. So the enunciating in the proper kind of words of his ideals and then applying them in physical acts, this will change the form. And of course, transformation, interestingly, is related to the astral body, over which Taurus must gain control, because it's this out-of-control astral body which is really the problem in the early days of Taurean development. So the improvement of the quality of matter through transmutation, the improvement of the forms of response through transformation, the movement towards archetypal forms in transfiguration, and translation into cosmic etheric living, all of these lie ahead of the Taurean, who is rightly going to use the energy of speech as a sublimatory power. And this will mean that the instinctual nature will die down, and deliberate action on behalf of the higher love and will take its place. So let's put it like this. Let's see, that's not there. Instinct, which is so Taurean, will give place to intellect, and thence to the intuition, buddhi, and cosmic etheric living. Certainly the Buddha, with his great sense of the suchness of life, the indescribable suchness, the thatness, could not be put into words easily. He was a great enunciator of truth. If one reads some of what was taken down that the Buddha had said, it's astonishing how clear and very constructive his statements were. There's just an aura of lucidity around everything he said. Certainly the third ray was not being used. It was the second ray, the first ray. We're not sure about his, well, yes, his mental ray, the sixth. We cannot generalize and think we see the mental ray, the sixth ray mentality in those around us by thinking of what the Buddha did with it, because he's already in a much higher category, and it is a very rare phenomenon, we are told. The results of the creative work of materializing the vision, that's must be carried to the point of effectual demonstration in Scorpio, in which signs the final tests are applied to prove that the energy is flowing freely and without impediment and obstruction between the throat and sacral centers. Sometimes Scorpio, we are told, is given to the suppression of the sexual energy. At least in Christianity it has been the case, and this, as DK said, is both unnatural, unhealthy, it's abnormal. But these two energies together both have connection with the sacral and throat centers. Scorpio's hierarchical rulership by Mercury shows its connection to the throat center. The formulation of words and thoughts. The planet Mercury is very strong in relation to Taurus, although not given as one of the rulers, because Mercury is known as Bud, and it is connected with the Buddha, whose sign was Taurus. The Buddha is Mercury. So it's interesting that even though Taurus is ruled by Venus, it has a very strong connection with both the Earth via Venus and with Mercury via, in a sense, via the Buddha. So Taurus, when it has become constructive on the reversed wheel, can bring about creative work, and it can materialize the vision. It has the strong ajna center, it has the strong inner eye, it can see and it can articulate. So Taurus The, the Taurus energy helps one both see and articulate. And this leads to the materializing of that which has been conceived in line with the plan. The light which has revealed the plan reveals that which must be materialized. And part of this is using the throat center to articulate what must be materialized, and the intelligence of Taurus is aided both by Venus and by Mercury. There must be a triangle between Vulcan, Venus, and Mercury, I suspect. Okay, and Scorpio then being the sign in which the final tests, at least the tests for the first 3 initiations, are applied to prove both to the initiate and to others, and to the master, to the initiate himself, to others, and to the hierarchy, that the energy is flowing freely, without impediment, and Pluto, one of the rulers of Scorpio, helps get rid of impediments, and without impediment and obstruction between the throat and sacral center, so there is a great flow of energy to sustain the creativity. The sacral center, in a sense, turns upward, and the lower gate is closed, unless, of course, for service purposes. Even the Buddha did have a child, we are told, and of course this may have been Gautama who had the child in that respect. To show that right direction has been achieved, and there is no longer any fear that the Taurean subject will blunder blindly forward. Those are the words. The bull in the china shop, the miscalculation of the energy that has to be used, the heedlessness of co-measuring the energy emanating from oneself and what the environment can take or receive. That self-centeredness prevents a proper assessment of energy release, and thus the blind blundering destruction which can occur until Taurus really carefully examines the impact that he is having on his environment. We've been, one of the disciples who was Taurus, DK told him that he went forward without consideration of others and knocked them down, something to that effect. Knocked down those in his way. Life at that stage is not meant to be American football, so the blundering, blindly forward motion can be properly adjusted through the light of intelligence and the light of will and love. So the Scorpio tests past show that the individual can be trusted, that he's no longer considered a hazard. Until the midway point between the second and third initiation, the disciple is actually considered a risk, a hazard, and only when he has proved that he can overcome certain temptations in the desert is he no longer considered a hazard, and then he is truly mentally polarized. Until the midway point between the second initiation and third initiation, the disciple is considered a hazard, both to himself and to the hierarchical projects. So these provements, as it were, are very necessary in Scorpio as demonstrations of achievement. But instead, now the disciple will, in the future, move intelligently upon the way of liberation and not smashing and destroying the very things that could help him and help others. The way of liberation. Because Taurus, is actually a sign of keen intelligence. And we've talked about the reasons this should be so. Certainly the presence of the fifth ray is there, and the third ray in the earth relation, and the great light that is accumulated in Taurus, the accumulation of knowledge adds to the intelligence. It's not just Gemini that is intelligent. Actually, there's quite a bit of intelligence possible in all of these first three signs, with the Mercury rulership and Uranian rulership in Aries, and with the Venus rulership and Mercury association in Taurus, and with, again, Venus and Mercury, both rulers in Gemini. So the light is strong in these signs, but it has to be used wisely. So he will move intelligently forward on the way of liberation, the way that brings about his own release, and at the same time sweeps him into those activities which bring about the release of others. When the great light is poured forth, others are released. Krishnamurti was a great example of work upon an austere aspect of the teaching ray, and many people count themselves more illumined because of his influence. For example, he had this strong connection with Master K.H., at least in the earlier days. The wisdom aspect was very strongly pronounced. Probably the second ray that he expressed was, of the three major types of second ray souls, the wisdom side, much associated with the first ray. Just as pure love with the second ray, and the meticulous entirety with the third ray. He taught principles, really, if you think about it. And many benefited from this. I was thinking also of the illuminative power of Immanuel Kant and Bertrand Russell, both obviously upon the mathematical philosophical third ray, and still being Taureans, spreading the light not only of knowledge, but also we could consider of wisdom. I remember a book by Bertrand Russell called The Wisdom of the West. He certainly was a man of knowledge, profound knowledge, but as he matured, and he lived a very long life, 97 or 98 years, he verged more towards wisdom. He had also pronounced Scorpio, interestingly enough. So release will also come to others. The Buddha was one of the great examples of one who provided release for others. He pursued his own way of disengagement from the negative fruits of ordinary desire, and he taught others to do likewise. It was a great lesson in discipleship and in detachment, and he was so clear about the path that had to be followed. If you kind of add up the 4 and the 8, you get the 12, interestingly enough. And we were told that the Buddha of activity, which the Buddha was not yet, I suppose, at that point, is made from 12 energies. There may be correspondences in the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path to some of these energies which can produce the Buddha of activity. Whenever you see numbers that are similar, you know, there may be a path of interpretation between them. In Scorpio, the man who has mastered his lessons in Taurus, see, they go back and forth. We cannot say that Taurus is higher than Scorpio or Scorpio is higher than Taurus. In the way DK seemed to describe it in the Cancer chapter, what began in Taurus went to Scorpio and then returned in full illumination to Taurus, but there seems to be a constructive interplay between these opposites, and they really are, in the last analysis, one axis and one energy. In Scorpio, the man who has mastered his lessons in Taurus must demonstrate that creativity which will work under the inspiration of aspiration and vision, and constructively attempt to express the beauty which all forms intrinsically veil, thus bringing to all revelation of that underlying purpose which motivates all events and forms. This is worth rereading. I'm recalling the sculptor Rodin had a powerful Taurean energy, scorpionic energy, and a great creator of beauty, so much power in his sculptures. In Scorpio, the man who has mastered his lessons in Taurus must demonstrate that creativity. See, creativity in both, right? The fourth ray is coming constellationally, powerfully through both of these signs. Must demonstrate that creativity which will work under the inspiration of aspiration and vision. An interesting phrase, isn't it? That if there is sufficient and the right kind of aspiration and vision, the result will be inspiration. And constructively, rather than destructive. There's so much destructiveness in Scorpio, isn't there? But, some people have said that in order to make the stone speak and the true sculpture emerge, one must chisel away all the excrescences, that the true form is already within the stone, and that which does not apply has to be removed. And that is perhaps a destructive act, which is actually a constructive and creative act. So the man who has mastered his lessons in Taurus must demonstrate that creativity which will work under the inspiration of aspiration and vision. When we look, interestingly, illumination is so much associated with Taurus. Right, mother of illumination. But when you look at the 5 stages of meditation, or the 5 to see, Leo concentration, Virgo meditation, Libra contemplation, and what is it for Scorpio? It is illumination. How interesting. And then inspiration for Sagittarius, and finally initiation for Capricorn. So that makes 6. But illumination is associated, and the light of day is a peculiar kind of light associated with Scorpio. A revelation within the cosmic ethers, a revelation of the Buddhic plane, whereon the human hierarchy, the 4th creative hierarchy, is meant to express. So this number 4 and intuitive illumination associated so much, both with Scorpio and with Taurus. So constructively attempt to express the beauty which all forms intrinsically veil. So there's that penetrative quality of Scorpio, right? The penetrative of Scorpio, because there is an intrinsic beauty within the form, and Scorpio must know how to penetrate the veil and reveal that intrinsic beauty, thus bringing to all revelation of that underlying purpose which motivates all events and forms. So it's the digging quality of Scorpio, isn't it? The ability to get behind the form and behind the veil. This Scorpio has. So if there is an unseen beauty, I see the unseen, I realize the unseen beauty of the world, as it is said in the 4th ray formula. I suppose the law of repulse on the 4th ray. To get at unseen beauty, the plutonic penetrative power of Scorpio is very useful. All these aspects of basic change in purpose, interest, and orientation must manifest in Scorpio. Notice how while he's talking here about Taurus, he gives us so much information on the opposite sign. So, there's no way to read the Tibetan in a linear manner. I mean, he may give us certain linear tabulations occasionally just to organize and reorganize the mind, but he has woven so many threads of illumination throughout his books, and they have to be read with that in mind and read as a whole, and great familiarity has to develop so that these threads, which are appearing in many different places, can be related, woven together. All these aspects of basic change in purpose, interest, and orientation must manifest in Scorpio. So we've been told that the Taurean individual will go through many upheavals and shocking changes and so forth. Uranus is interestingly powerful in Scorpio. It's the exalted planet, and it falls in Taurus, and yet there's that old saying that every fall is an exaltation, and every exaltation is in a way a fall. So just because a planet falls in a sign does not mean that it is not powerful for something. I mean, the moon is exalted in Taurus, and that's both good and bad, and the moon falls in Scorpio, and that is both good and bad, depending on the purpose to be achieved. Excuse me. Thus bringing to all a revelation of that underlying purpose which motivates all events and forms, this penetrative power to see the love which underlies the happenings of the time, and the will and the intelligence which underlies those happenings. Scorpio can reveal these things. They must manifest in Scorpio. These basic changes, these reorientations, these Uranian reorientations must manifest in Scorpio. Let's call them that. These Uranian reorientations must manifest in Scorpio. And the word is manifest, even though Taurus is also a sign of creative manifestation. You think about the fourth ray and its connection with the densest level. You know, there's the mind, lower mind, emotions, ether, and then the fourth level, the dense physical level, and both Taurus and Scorpio through the number 4 are connected with manifestation upon that level. Even though they're both on the fixed cross, DK tells us that the third ray is missing from Scorpio, but not missing from Taurus, because Venus has connected the third ray Earth so strongly with Taurus. And yet both, the weight of manifestation is impressed upon the Scorpio individual. He simply has to demonstrate, prove and demonstrate on the dense physical plane that which he realizes internally and that which he has apparently achieved internally. So all these aspects of basic change in purpose, these are very transformational signs. Interest and orientation must manifest in Scorpio. Notice these words, manifest and prove, thus proving the effectiveness of the evolutionary processes undergone in the great repeated transition from Scorpio to Taurus and from Taurus to Scorpio. This is a, let's call it a transformational, spell it right, interplay. And if I were to turn here in the, whoop, that's no good. If I was to look here, try to go down in this Cancer chapter, there is the discussion of the interplay, and here it is. Taurus, Scorpio. Powerful focus, lower desire leads to death and defeat. That's Taurus to Scorpio. The triumph of the lower nature, which eventuates in the awakening to satiety and death. Triumph of the lower nature, the moon is exalted in Taurus, and that is the triumph of that which should not triumph eventually. Leads to satiety and death, this feeling of revulsion, of taking in any more, pursuing desire any more, the death of desire in Scorpio. The man is the prisoner of desire, and at the moment of consummation knows his prison. When he has expended the energy which should be used for other things, his prison is revealed. But then on the reversed wheel, the final victory of soul over form. So that is Scorpio in the ascendant. Triumph. Death and darkness demonstrate as life and light as the result of this energy relationship. So what really is death and what really is darkness? It's that which is below, and it gives way to life and light in Taurus. We're coming back to Taurus in a way, aren't we? The dark night of the soul, which only the true Scorpion can experience, becomes the radiant sun. And the greatest type of illumination is found here. Remember those three factors of illumination we just studied. We studied Taurus, we studied Vulcan. So Taurus in this case was related to the physical sun, although not only, and Vulcan to the heart of the sun, and the sun itself as illuminator was related to the central spiritual sun. So going back to those pages 338 or so, we see this, and 337, this very productive interplay between Scorpio and Taurus, and it happens many times, and I suppose when the sun is in one of these signs and the ascendant in the other, it's particularly acute, or if a person is born at a Scorpio full moon or a Taurus full moon, the moon will provide that interplay, and then we know that the attention must go towards the sign which holds the sun and not the moon. In other words, just imagine being born with the sun in Scorpio and the moon in Taurus. The moon is exalted, and all of the negative implications of that exaltation have to be overcome by the powerful scorpionic energy. So recheck those sentences on page 337 and 338, and they discuss this great and repeated transition from Scorpio to Taurus and from Taurus to Scorpio. The way it's listed on 337 and 338 is from Taurus to Scorpio and from Scorpio to Taurus. But we get the idea that there is a transformational interplay at work. This cycle of moves constitutes within the greater cycle a rhythm of experience, of tremendous moment. After all, we are one of the 7 solar systems of which ours is one, and they have a particular relation to the Scorpio-Taurus axis, the Taurus-Scorpio axis, as we showed on page 50 of this book. These 7 signs are preeminently life experience signs, and I suppose we're talking about moving from Taurus to Scorpio, I suppose. Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, and then Scorpio. Yes, we are. These are signs, preeminently life experience signs. They're not so much about release, let us say. Release seems to come in relation to the signs following Scorpio, because a major detachment occurs in Scorpio, which allows a higher form of life to occur. Well, I've been just rolling along here, and I've kind of forgotten that we are over our hour. The last time I looked, just 20 minutes had occurred. So I think where I will lay off is here at this point on transitional interplay, and I'll pick it up when I can next, probably in a few days. Esoteric Astrology 110, and page, I suppose it's 110A, that's the way I put it, even though there may be no B. And let's see what page we're on. Whoop, that won't do. Page 398. Getting there, aren't we? Getting very close to beginning the second part of the book. And let's just say we will beginning with sorry for these little goofs, but with Esoteric Astrology Adventure 111, page 398. We'll do that. And meanwhile, so much to think about in this summary chapter of Taurus, though he tells us it's the 11th sign. It would only be so if we began the clockwise movement in Pisces, which we sometimes do, and DK refers to signs as being the 5th or 6th. He's obviously started in Pisces. If we were to start in Aries, which we can do, considering Aries to be the first sign for the wheel in either direction, then Taurus would be the 12th of the signs. So that was a big hint that Tibetan gave by saying that Taurus was the 11th sign, and that 11th sign would tell us that we had a Pisces beginning. All right then, friends, we will continue with our work in this regard and try to understand the depths of this greatest and oldest of all the sciences, of which really we are just learning the ABCs, as difficult as these ABCs may seem to us. So we'll see you before long.